Thanks to a recent GOA FOIA request, we have now confirmed what everyone's always known, that more than a decade, the ATF has been spying on online gun forums, social media websites, and more. And entirely unsurprisingly, ATF has often chosen to target and harass law-abiding citizens rather than go after actual criminals. Today, we're diving into GOA's latest FOIA, detailing ATF's large-scale surveillance campaign against everyday gun owners. Hi, I'm Ben, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. But before we get into that video, I wanted to take a second to let you know about GOA's annual convention, Goals. The Gun Owner Advocacy and Leadership Summit is set to be held August 9th and 10th of this year in Knoxville, Tennessee. Come out and visit with some of your favorite manufacturers, participate in activism training, and hear from the top voices in the Second Amendment community. The best part? It's free for GOA members. So sign up today using the link in our description. Okay, now back to the video. On January 8th, 2020, GOA's lawyers submitted a Freedom of Information Act request, or FOIA, to the ATF. We wanted to know whether ATF had been capturing, tracking, and reading the Second Amendment community's online posts. So, we requested records describing any ATF programs or activities that monitor, track, or catalog information obtained from online message boards, forums, or other social media platforms. And on November 24th, 2024, almost 5 years after we submitted our FOIA, we finally received back a 35-page document detailing how the ATF is engaged in the intense scrutiny of all major public forums and monitoring of law-abiding gun owners who access these services online. As it turns out, ATF's self-styled intelligence assessment on internet firearm sales dates all the way back to November 2015, meaning ATF has been monitoring online forums for at least a decade now. Of course, we dug through this document, and today I'm here to tell you that this is yet another example of ATF's rampant abuse of its power. Numerous times throughout the document, ATF not only misstates the law, but also declares its desire to monitor everything that gun owners do online, both illegal and lawful. In fact, in this internal document, ATF sounds less like a law enforcement agency and more like a political organization, criticizing Congress's choice not to regulate private sales. And to top it all off, GOA discovered a familiar name tied to this intelligence gathering scheme. In fact, the very same ATF inspector who we caught breaking the law and harassing an FFL in one of our cases is featured prominently in this FOIA. So let's get into it. First off, ATF claims that the purpose of its intelligence assessment is to provide information and analysis about online firearm sales, including both legal and illegal transactions. In fact, ATF boldly states that even after a potential threat is found to be not credible, the agency will continue to monitor the law-abiding gun owner. This poses the question, why does ATF have anything to do with lawful transactions, and why is it monitoring them? That's not what Congress intended or allowed when it tasked ATF to investigate criminal and regulatory violations of federal law, violent crime, and domestic terrorism. Next, ATF makes the outlandish claim that the more anonymity employed by a firearms purchaser, the greater the likelihood that the transaction violates federal law. How ATF came to this ridiculous conclusion is beyond me. It's unlikely that, just because gun owners care about their privacy, that they must be violating federal laws. In fact, protection of gun owners' privacy is baked right into the statute ever since Congress banned the creation of gun owner registries in 1986. In other words, Congress knew that anonymity is important to gun owners, taking steps to protect the very activity ATF now wants to monitor and surveil. Of course, we know how much the ATF loves their lists and databases, so naturally, they're going to be upset anytime someone tries to protect themselves against having their privacy invaded by the federal government merely for exercising their Second Amendment rights. But that doesn't deter ATF, which claims that unregulated marketplaces impede law enforcement's ability to accurately trace firearms. So, what does ATF consider to be unregulated marketplaces? Well, that would be the very scary deep web websites like Craigslist, Truth About Guns, Cowguns, and AR15.com. Yep, you read that right. ATF is monitoring the posts of those who use ARFCOM, the world's most popular online gun forum. But wait, there's more. ATF also considers Reddit and Facebook to be part of the deep web. ATF even provides a chart on the different types of Facebook groups based on their privacy settings. Later on, ATF claims that it's actively monitoring these sites too. But perhaps worse than its desire for monitoring law-abiding gun owners, ATF's document constantly misstates the law that the agency is charged with enforcing. The first glaring error is ATF's assertion that there are only 4 legitimate types of firearm transactions online. 1. FFLs facilitating transfers between private parties. 2. FFLs advertising and selling online. 3. FFL to FFL transfers. And 4. FFLs purchasing firearms from private parties. Nowhere in that list does a private sale between 2 individuals appear. Of course, private sales are perfectly lawful, no matter what ATF claims. No doubt, ATF hates private sales because they don't generate any records or paperwork for ATF to sweep up and enter into its nearly billion record illegal registry of gun owners. In fact, ATF later complains that, because firearms production shows no signs of slowing down, the secondary market of used firearms continues to grow, making firearms traces more difficult for law enforcement to complete. That's probably why ATF tried to criminalize private sales in its Engage in the Business rule last year. Thankfully, GOA quickly secured an injunction blocking enforcement of the rule, and GOA members remain protected to this day. But based on the dates of this document, it does make me wonder how long the Engage in the Business rule was in the works behind the scenes. Moving on, ATF's misstatements of the law continue throughout the document. ATF later claims that the internet contains a trove of information about potentially illegal acts, like assembling a homemade or 3D printed firearm and building 80% receivers into assault rifles. Of course, ATF never explains which of these activities are illegal. In fact, none are. Nevertheless, ATF complains that these activities are exploiting gaps in firearm laws. Since when is it a bad thing to be engaged in perfectly lawful activities? ATF's concerning statements only scratch the surface. In fact, on a few different pages, ATF expresses its preference for websites that offer no anonymity at all for gun sales. It's no surprise then that ATF also expresses its distaste for person-to-person transactions that, quote, might bypass ATF oversight. In fact, ATF mocks gun owners' privacy concerns, surmising that individuals only want to avoid oversight because they are either A, a criminal, or they don't want the quote-unquote government to know that they have a firearm. Of course, it's government statements just like this one that demonstrate why gun owners should be concerned about their privacy. At this point, we thought our video was done. Then we noticed something at the end of the ATF's document, which lists the point of contact as one Nicholas Speranza Jr., an industry operations intelligence specialist for the ATF. Where have we heard that name before? Well, as it turns out, GOA has run into Mr. Speranza before, and recently. In fact, Mr. Speranza was a central figure in our lawsuit challenging ATF's zero-tolerance license revocation of a Florida FFL by the name of Kilton Tactical, and Mr. Speranza's involvement there was no better for gun owners than it was here. In that case, Mr. Speranza was the ATF inspector that personally conducted the compliance inspection that ultimately led ATF to attempt to revoke Kilton's license. During that inspection, Mr. Speranza harassed people in the shop, disdainfully referring to one repeat customer as a frequent flyer, and at one point, chasing a mother and father out of the shop, screeching about how the parents buying a firearm as a gift for their daughter is a straw purchase. But that's not all. Mr. Speranza also seized Kilton's business records without a warrant, removing Kilton's 4473s and bound book from the premises for days on end, so that he could complete his inspection in secret. Incredibly, at Kilton's revocation hearing, Mr. Speranza openly admitted to violating the law, even though ATF's own guidebook explains that inspectors are not authorized to remove a licensee's records or copies of records from the licensed premises, and that those who make seizures unlawfully are subject to disciplinary action, criminal liability, and/or civil liability. But as is usual for the ATF, the law was no impediment for Mr. Speranza, who ended his inspection of Kilton with the gleeful statement, "You're definitely getting shut down." Of course, after GOA stepped in, not only did Kilton not get shut down, but ATF quickly ended its revocation proceeding in order to sweep Mr. Speranza's numerous unlawful acts under the rug. All that to say, the fact that Mr. Speranza's name again appears in this ATF surveillance document is no coincidence. Many at ATF, like Mr. Speranza, have made it their goal to harass and criminalize those who enjoy their Second Amendment rights. This must end. Now, with President Trump taking power and promising to end the tyranny of bureaucrats throughout the federal government, we're calling on those in power to rein in this rogue agency, or perhaps get rid of the ATF entirely. Now, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with GOA's latest fights for your rights.